Well, good evening. I've got to find the our culprit here. There we go. We've got him on screen. Well, good evening. I'm Andre Faust, and with me we have that notorious blogger that nobody knows, Charles Leblanc. Of course, thanks for coming on board. Two things that we're going to talk about this evening is Charles every year around this time does an election prediction. We're going to hear what his prediction, and of course I'll probably argue with him and tell him that he's wrong, or we'll agree. And part two, we're going to look at the subject of whether or not we're going into a police state or not. Just got to ask, I seen something come up and I was told they couldn't hear you. Um,
That's
uh,
good.
yeah, anybody out there, can you now hear Charles? Maybe some wouldn't want to hear you, but
Exactly.
I had noticed that on my board that you were shut off. It must be because you've been you know questioning our bishop from our diocese
Yes, yes.
and the
Of
thunders.
course.
So
Put me in more trouble.
so yeah. So let me know if you can hear Charles or not, because I can hear him off
You
my
hear me?
stations.
Yes. One, two, three. Can you hear me? One,
Okay.
two, three.
A Red has confirmed that you are now. They can now hear you.
You can now hear.
I hear the clicking of the guns. You're so loved. So getting back to the election issue. So I believe that if an election were to be thrown tomorrow, the minority liberals, I think the Green Party, Dave Coon's position, one, he's safe. I think he doesn't,
Oh, he did a wonderful job.
he doesn't have to lose any sleep. Uh,
No.
two two districts as we're going to pay attention to. Well, I think Steve Horseman's is going to do all right. I don't think he's going to lose sleep. Now, my district,
Steve Horseman. Steve Horseman is in trouble.
I don't think so. I mean, he's a likable guy. There's a
He's
few.
charming,
Yeah,
very charming. But there's some issues, and there's some. There's he's.
I mean,
Uh,
you're upset because he's not giving you the shitter in Carlton Park. you know,
That that and the issue of prisoners forcing to walk home after they finish their sentence, and he said it's only a 2 hour ride. So Stephen has a lot to learn more. This is being charming.
and that well, he's no longer Minister of Justice, so that's out of his jurisdiction.
No, it don't matter if you have if you. It don't matter if he's minister of justice. He could be the minister of Petticoat Junction. You're an MLA. You should care for the human beings,
uh,
especially the people with mental illness. That's no excuse to say, well, he's no longer Minister of Public Safety.
No, that is an issue that has to be addressed. I know at the federal, I don't know, maybe it doesn't exist anymore, but at one time at the federal, when a person finished their time, they'd provide them a suitcase, a suit, and a bus fare that equaled the distance to where they were originally arrested. The provincial system is still back in the dark ages. I mean, it's still 1800s, 1600s mentality, and if the provincial system had their way, they'd still quartermain people. Uh, so, but like I say, as far as like horseman's riding, I think that's going to go well. The one that's going to be
It
interesting.
depends. It depends who's going to be the PC candidate.
Um, yeah, well, that's always the unknown, the unknown variable. But just his personality, his red sneakers, and he's good on the soapbox. The one that's
Very charming.
the one that's going to be very interesting is my writing, Fredericton Grand Lake. Right now we have Pam Lynch, a very likable person. I like Pam.
Yeah.
I mean, our political
Happen-
our political philosophies are different, but you know, I got to throw. I'm going to get shot for this here, but for a blonde girl, she's not too bad. I just shot myself in the foot, but
Yeah, you did. You did. I could just imagine the comments. Pam is okay. Pam's been there for 2 or 3 terms now, and she lost. She won by 25 votes against Chris Austin the last election, and Chris Austin hasn't been. He's been sleeping with his eyes open every night since the election. Just 25 votes, so it goes to show you that every vote counts. And I think Chris could win this time around.
Well, that's where I'm putting my money on is on Chris, and the reason why is that the PC vote comes from what I call the St. John River Band. That's that highway that runs from the Princess Margaret Bridge to Jimsick. That's pretty well hardcore PC as far as voter demographics. But the problem is that that group doesn't really go out and vote. The group that votes is the rural districts, and that's where Chris gets the advantage. He's well known. Now, in the last elections, the Liberals, during the nominations, they screwed that one up big times, because in the nominations there was 2 local boys. One was from Grand Lake and the other one was from Chipman, and they were just as popular as what Chris Austin was. But for some reason during the nominations, well, I can't get into I can't get into the reason. No. We've talked about this personally. There was a game plan that was done, and it was an unknown candidate that walked in, and it just didn't happen. So basically, that move there of electing that person destroyed.
So what's going to be the issue? What's going to be the issue if tomorrow is the election? See, this is the funny part. You asked me that earlier. If the election was held tomorrow, what's the issue?
I don't think there's any pressing issues that we don't have the environmental issue. That's AtCon, well, that's just a ghost in the past. Probably they'll try to bring that up to.
What about the insurance? Somebody just called me tonight, very, very angry that the insurance is going way up.
Well, we should turf the insurance companies out. Because, look, if I was a businessman, one thing I would love is to have the government legislate something that would enhance the profits of my business, that would force you to deal with me. Insurance should be looked after by the province. I mean, my position is, and this is the lead into privatization. Privatization is not the way to go. Insurance, that is a form of privatization in an abstract way. It's a system that's set up that assures the insurance companies that they're going to get their money, because we have the laws. If you're out driving your car and you're not insured, you're fined. You can't pay the fine. You're off to Black River Road, right? So the insurance company just love that. Hey, what a powerful marketing tool, and that should be taken away from them. And that's why I say the insurance, as everything else, should be, run by the province. The ambulance systems should not be the P3. It should be run. I mean, any forestry should be owned by the province. It's, that's our resources. That's not Irving's resources. So I mean, I'm coming hard on privatization because I think that's one of the worst things for the province, and that. So I've given my
people are upset. People are upset. People, like I said earlier, you couldn't hear me, but with this Donald Trump down the States is in the news, is even CBC every hour. CBC, this Canada news at 4 o'clock. Donald Trump. Canadian news, and all they talk about is Donald Trump. So people, what they're going to do is get so sick and tired of listening to Donald Trump. But they know more about Donald Trump than they know about the local politics. And what's going to happen? They're not going to vote. They're just going to be fed up of politics, fed up, and just say, I'm not voting. That's the way I see it.
Well, Well, I guess we'll see. And this is why we've got this on record, because as we get to the elections, of course, I'm going to pull this video out and we're going to do a comparison. And probably
You would do that, would you?
oh yeah, I would do that. And if I'm right, I'm going to go yeah 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 yeah
Yeah.
yeah. You know that. I also know the other way. You'll do the same to me. So okay, so we've covered the predictions. I say it's going to be a liberal minority, with the Alliance picking up 1 or 2 seats, and the Green Party picking up a couple seats. The voters are going to migrate from the Liberals to any one of the other two parties, and they're going to migrate from the Conservatives to any of the two
And
parties.
the issue will be bilingualism. So sad, but that's what the issue is going to be about.
Well, we'll see if that comes to the surface. That's still on the back burner. Like I say, I mean, we're looking at today, a picture of today.
Yeah.
And
And the language commissioner has been very, very quiet. This is the calm before the storm.
that it just maybe. So okay, I think we've now hashed that part out. Um, okay, you haven't really given a prediction. I know you're going to pop one out on your blog, but probably in the next month or so. I can bet a beer on that. So
I
anyway,
haven't looked writing by writing, seriously. I'm just like everybody else. I just don't know. Maybe we'll still be talking about the scandal with the speaker at the legislature.
well, that's an ongoing process right now. You know, he's obviously contesting it, and that's correct. And this is a great lead-in. Red Fournier has left a message about the Bill C-75.
What's
Um,
that?
Bill C-75. In essence, actually, I think I've got a note here. Uh, okay, I'm gonna read this as I wrote it, because it is kind of a difficult concept to explain, because what it deals with is a speedy trial, and there's something that's not quite working out properly. So Bill C-75 was
Is that
supposed.
federal?
Yes, was supposed to be federal.
Oh,
It's a reaction to the Supreme Court of Canada's landmark decision in Jordan, wherein the court changed the rules of the trial delays, but missed the point, writes Michael Byron. That decision didn't seek to cut down trial delays in order to appease the police, prosecutors, judge, and complainants. The,
yeah,
po-
yeah, yeah.
the point was to vindicate the Charter of Rights of the defendants to a fair and within a reasonable time. And
Yeah.
again, this all falls back on that a lot of people, and this is the problem with populist thinking, right? Because they don't understand. I mean, here in Canada, you're innocent until proven guilty.
I don't think so.
Well, that is, what our Charter of Rights. But this Bill C-75 is in in the in the attempts to go into mass production, as somebody's quoted, moving at such a quick pace may.
Yeah, yeah, may violate the person's right. You see, what they want to do is usually right now here in New Brunswick, especially in New Brunswick, if you're charged with a summary charge, summary means number one, legal aid in New Brunswick will not give you a lawyer, and number two, there's no preliminary hearing to find out if there's enough evidence to proceed to trial. Therefore, 99% of the time, if you don't have a lawyer, you're going to plead guilty. And what's happening here, what they want to do, the way I see it, when it's an indictable offense, it's automatically you have a preliminary hearing. But they want to eliminate that. They want to say, nope, no more of that, straight to trial. So you can just imagine how the people with no lawyers or a duty counsel that's standing outside smoking a cigarette, and oh, okay, I talked to the prosecutor, and this is what we're going to do. I'm not guilty. Well, sorry, there's no preliminary hearing anymore. So, there's nothing we could do. So, to eliminate the preliminary hearing, that's it's BS.
Well, I've never heard of anything at the federal level of preliminary hearings being removed from indictable offense. You are correct on summary convictions. And that's the rationale is that the likelihood that you're going to go to jail is highly unlikely, and that's the reason why legal aid here in New Brunswick doesn't. Ontario, again, we're in the backwoods here.
Oh, big time.
On all fronts. I mean,
everything.
We might as well be living in log cabins. I mean,
we will see. By the way, I'm going to court next Monday for my civil trial. What is it? April 16 at 2:00, and we can't go into really big details of me. But that civil trial, you were there, and other provinces, to make sure that their constitutional rights are upheld. If you need a lawyer for a civil suit, the province will pay. They will pay. Here in New Brunswick, civil suit? No. I'm charged with assault. No. Summary? No. Sexual assault? No. I mean, like you said, we're in the deep woods, and what we need here in New Brunswick, the problem is, if somebody screws up, like Michel Vionneau was shot dead by the Batters police, okay, no problem, we'll have a coroner inquest. And then you get people showing up, the family, all the little media, they focus on the family for a couple of days, they cry, then they give them the recommendation, then the government takes the recommendation, throw it in the garbage bag. And that's to cover their butts. Have a coroner inquest. And we need a provincial public inquiry. Look, the Conservatives are asking for a provincial inquiry on Chris Collin, but they're not asking for provincial inquiry on what happened to Michel Vionneau or Daniel Levesque that was shot dead by the Moncton RCMP right before those three officers were shot dead. But there's issues that the only thing we have here is the New Brunswick Police Commission, which that's another story. It's a farce. It's all cops. And they all have a list of the cops to investigate, and they're all cops.
Well, it's not even that. It's not even that with the police commission. I mean, we were at a meeting, and I addressed the point that the police commission really has very little powers when you look at the regulation. They really have very, very little power.
Whose fault is that?
Again, a lot of this here injustice, falls in with people, but people don't want to get involved in justice issues.
Nope.
The average person goes to work, pounds off their 8-hour days, goes home, eats, watches TV, fires back a couple beers, and after July 1st, they'll fire up a couple spliffs. God bless them. But here's a question for you from Steve Dunnett. And the question is, what does Charles think of the Fredericton Police Force wearing cameras?
Wearing cameras? Well, that's very simple. If you see a cop now coming out of his cruiser, immediately arm yourself. You can no longer say, hey, how's it going? So what's going on here? Well, this is what happened. No. He's taping you. He is taping you. So they will take that video and edit it. Don't forget, the police, the Crown prosecutor, the justice system, they're all working together. The cops used to be the mouth, the ears, the eyes of what they seen. That is no longer the case. We have police officers going after certain individual, innocent people, voila. And so answering that question, what you have to do immediately, you see a cop, have 4 or 5 people, put the camera in their face. And if they say, hey, 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 you're not allowed to film me. No, tell them, you film me, I'm going to film you. They're supposed to serve and protect us, not to videotape and convict us. No.
You know, just for clarification, when you said arm, you did show your camera, but that is what you mean by armed. This is to avoid any ambiguity, because, well, Bill C-51, which is now law, is that, you know, somebody could push that word arm to refer to an actual firearm, right?
I'll blame it on my ADHD. I was speaking before thinking. My God. You armed yourself with a camera.
Good. There. That clears all ambiguity, because that way there you're not going to get snatched off the street.
I don't believe
as
in
a
violence.
terrorist. No, and a lot of things should be resolved without violence, but you know, when
I leave here every day. I have this camera, and thank God, and I'm thankful for the public to buy me this. But I have this on video every time, on video, right on the side. The cops come. You got to put that camera on. But then again, look what happened. I mean, tell your viewers to go to YouTube and write Edmiston Police. Man, those 2 police officers that grabbed me the day that Donald Trump was elected, 2 cops, plain clothes, grabbed me at the legislature. And I put my camera on. And you know what? I mean, the video is very, very strong. And the Liberal government, I still say it was planned by the Liberal government, because it happened right near the legislature. All cameras all around, and if I would have punched one of those cops, God knows what would have happened. But why did they come and confront me right there? But that's another story. But just arm yourself with the camera.
And okay, so we were pretty well. We ran a little over time, but there was a couple questions that did come up, and it's well, sometimes it takes a little longer to express oneself. So we covered the prediction and the police state to kind of wrap up on that. I know I'm an old fart. I've been around, and I remember, being in high school in the 70s to now, and I can tell you that between the 70s and now, we're a less freer society than what we were back then. And just to close off, in the late 60s, when I was a kid, like I'm from La Belle Province du Québec, I'm a bona fide lily pad hopper. As a kid, I'd go back to asbestos, and I used to be able to buy firecrackers. There'd be 25 firecrackers in a package, and it was 25 cents. And so I'd go buy $10 worth of firecrackers, and at 12, 13 years old, that's big money, right? I'd come back, and I was going to Barker's Point School at the time. But how I brought it back, I had this tin lunchbox. Firecrackers were in the lunchbox, and I got on the Air Canada flight to come back to Fredericton. Could you imagine today if I tried to walk with that same box loaded with firecrackers? I'd be shot on sight. And that's
what bothers me more. You say we're worse off than 30 years ago, and 30 years ago we only had, like you said many times when you had the radio show at UNB, you would tell everyone where there was a roadblock. Now with social media, where everyone knows, if a cop does something bad, when I filmed that soldier that got beat up in 2009, right in front of the IROC. But you have cameras all over. You have social media with people opinion, and we're worse off than we were 30 years ago. Can you imagine if we didn't have social media around?
Uh, well, it'd be, you know, again, in the 70s, there was a paper, The Plain Dealer, and that was a bit like your blog. It was doing very, very well, but it lost advertisers because, you know, it didn't hide anything. It talked, and sometimes the stories were against some of the advertisers, so they didn't last too long. There are things that even with social medias that are going on that we don't know. What we have, you know, we are now in a police state. In the early stages of a police state, you know, I was
Cops are not working for the government. Cops are not being hired and working for the government like Matt Myers there, working for public safety now. That's not right.
and well, you know, to get to the police state, I was doing some research on Barker's Point on the murders that took place in 1949. Two individuals. They happened to be black that murdered this taxi driver. And anyway, I was doing some research. So I went back to 1949. I had to go through the full year, and it was amazing how quick the trial was in January, and they were executed in July of that year, very quick, back to back on the west side of the provincial jail on Brunswick Street, hung by the neck, double necktie party. But I was going through the year, I was seeing all kinds of acts of terrorism that was taking place in 1949. And the numbers, when I added it up, I said, geez, from 1970 to the present, we haven't seen those kind of numbers of terrorism. Yet, during the Stephen Harper for Bill C-51, that was the big thing, and we never really had terrorism. We had, you know, I think a schizophrenic who had some kind of delusion in the other person. I don't know if it was depression or whatnot. And, you know, they base that as terrorism. But we are going on a longer. Okay, I'm just seeing there's just something that come in from Red Forney. She's informing us that in a Niagara Falls bar, this guy used to film a cop, and after the police were done with him, he was in a sorry mess of injuries. So it's probably more, but I don't dare to click on the more because I don't know how this system will behave. It could crash, so I don't dare to. But anyway, we do have to wrap.
Or if you film the cops that will falsely accuse you of exploiting children for sex, voila, and raid this little place. I'm telling you, it's not good.
Well, you know, we know that the authority will do everything in its power to maintain authority, whether it's police, whether it's government, whether it's an employer. That's there's a big fear of loss of authority, even in the courts, when you challenge. This is why they come so hard against you, because you challenge the legitimacy of their authority. Well, you know, I'm thinking from a sociological point of view. Well, so that, you know, they can be perceived of maintaining that authority. They try to wipe you out. Well, they tried every angle, and I've said this many times, Charles. They used the war of attrition to you, and what they were trying to do when they were hitting you with all those charges at the same time and all that crap that, you know, in a very short period of time, bang, bang, bang. That was a war of attrition. And what they were counting on is that you would wear out and just throw your hands and say, enough's enough. But they underestimated your tenacity and stubbornness.
Number one, it's I always said, if this has happened to me, you can just imagine what other people that they went through the same thing and don't see the light of day in the media or all over the place. I hear these stories every day when I'm on the street. Number two, there's only one way to get authority over me, and that's to put a bullet between my eyebrows, because I'm Scottish.
Well, what a way to finish this here. Bullseye between your eyes. There, Charles, thanks for coming on board. It's always You know, controversy is always with you. uh, you know, when you're planted in the ground, there'll be controversy. It's just that, but you know,
Yeah,
you're
don't worry. When I'm planted on the ground, they will say, my God, he was the journalist of all journalists. But they only say that once a person is dead.
they're the great eulogies. But you know, you're a person. You're out there on the streets. You're catching things live time. You know, a lot of people say, you know, that you're a welfare bum. You should get a job. Well, you do have a job. Your blog, it takes up time. You're providing the public a service. Uh, you know,
This,
whether one
this, this used to be brown.
yeah, well, that's just getting old. I mean, like, you know, I'm getting a bit of that too. So we're going to conclude. Until next time, my friend, take care and keep out of those those things called squad cars. So till next time, take care.
Talk to you later.